So first, thanks for making time to dig into Eric's paper. It's obviously a crazy season at the end of the quarter. Last week was a little hectic. I sent out invites for all of them moving forward, so hopefully that will help alleviate any, or like at least we can flag any potential conflicts like a few weeks out, so we don't run into these issues in the future. The problem is with this second PBA, since it is like towards the end of each quarter, there's going to always inherently run up against some sort of grading, IA, crunch deadline, which is unfortunate, but also something good to flag for Luke or whoever. So I know we're all in the different varying stages here. I just want to name one thing that Eric's paper, hopefully you could recognize it, is definitely not as strong as the paper we looked at last time, and that was intentional. I wanted to choose one. I would say this is very, almost at the middle group of kids. So there are some good things in here, and some things that we definitely want to give feedback on, so we can help me get better as I try and figure out the history world, which is taking me 4 years and counting to time and tackle.
And you weren't here, but I want to apologize to all you guys, given the state of my health, I was not able to do it. Yeah, so given that last week I was not able to do anything after school and coming in late, and then taking 6 day Friday, and being like, I'm not this weekend.
Yeah.
We're in rough shape. In general.
Over here.
Yeah, we are. Because of like all this craziness, I'm gonna take writing the anchor paper again. It will be the last one I write until my cycle is back up, but I will take this one.
Thanks.
Of course.
Who was supposed to do it?
I
Was I
think it was
supposed to do it?
one. Yeah.
Oh no.
It was.
Okay.
But we'll figure it out before.
I'll just take your other cycle. I'll be fine in a couple months.
Yeah. I mean, it's, by cycle I mean, so we're supposed to all
Yeah, well, I mean, next time you're up, I can do it again.
Sounds good. Okay. So Eric's paper. The prompt was based on accounts from Pizarro's opinions and Bartolomé de las Casas, how did the Spanish view themselves and their culture in contrast to the Native Americans that they encountered? What evidence and language highlights their self-view in relation to the Native Americans? So we'll dig in there. Is there a particular strand that we want to start with? Usually we either go position, interpretation, sentence fluency.
Yeah, positions. I like that pattern.
All right, we'll do a quick whip around for what we scored it as. Do you want to start?
I can give it 1.
Why?
Oh, I thought we were just whipping around the score.
Whip around, like a 30-second rationale.
Oh, I gave it 1 because I saw a difference between the assertions and in the thesis and the assertions that he actually used in his paragraphs. I think that last sentence of his introduction, the Spanish view of the natives as inferior to lack of government or thought it was barbaric, looks to me like another assertion, and he never addresses it in his paragraphs.
I'll go. I actually noted that too, but I maybe turned a blind eye. I gave it a 3. I thought that the assertions were clarified, and I thought that last one, the one that you're talking about, the third assertion, tried to attack this idea of lack of government, and perhaps I gave him too much benefit of the doubt there. But I didn't think it was necessarily clarified in scope, and a 4 is all of them are clarified in scope. So I therefore did not give it a 4 for that reason.
I gave it a 2. I think that his assertions did relatively support the thesis, but I mean, I thought that it was understandable, but I couldn't give it a 3 because I didn't think it was completely clarified in scope, or even somewhat clarified in scope.
All right, let's just dig in. You bring up an interesting point.
So I realized what he was trying to do,
Yeah.
but the way it looks like, it's another assertion, and he never addresses the barbarism of the natives.
Sorry, are you looking at the last paragraph?
So the Spanish view the natives as inferior due to lack of government and were thought it was barbaric.
Mm-hmm.
So if you trace his argument back, they felt that they were more intelligent militarily and politically superior. That looks like an assertion.
Yeah,
The Spanish drew their natives due to the lack of government. That looks like an assertion. And were thought of as barbaric looks like an assertion. And so the way I looked at that, it was 1, 2, 3. The way it ended up being was 1, more intelligent, 2, militarily and politically superior. But then they don't address lack of government and barbarism. So like either way, he never talks about barbarism in the paragraphs, and that's in his assertions.
So it can't be a 2 because they don't all support the thesis?
yeah. So it's interesting, I think you're right, I think the second to last sentence is definitely the outline of the assertions in the thesis statement, where that you just said intelligence, military, and political. And it's like that last sentence is sort of what the Spanish thought of the others, but he never talks about that. And I guess maybe that's like, he
Do you
doesn't
think that
clarify
it's
it.
implicit though? So this idea of, in the second paragraph where he goes and talks about Atahualpa being illiterate and just assume, because he doesn't define what he means by barbaric.
It's true.
So, I mean, if he's arguing that it's like an intelligence issue, the fact that they're not illiterate, he might be conflating this idea of barbarism, and that's all of these inferiorities.
I agree with that, but I think it's dangerous to give him that benefit of the doubt.
Sure.
Because that's not what he's saying.
Yeah.
And they are two very different things.
Yeah, it's almost like it's an easy fix for Eric to like almost what I would say is to definitely hit at a 3. If he just sort of either number one, not really, I mean it gets rid of this, but probably what he wants to do is address these things in some of his assertions that are on. But he
Right.
doesn't do it.
Yeah.
I don't think that he says barbarism
At all.
again.
And
And
he
he
doesn't
doesn't
say
even talk about like violence, he doesn't talk about
the
any
things,
of the
yeah.
things that would equate to barbarism.
I think that he doesn't know the definition of barbaric.
I agree.
It sounds appropriate to say, and it could be arguable and defensible, but he doesn't apply it into the actual essay.
What did
Yeah.
you say about barbaric, like making that claim?
So I think that that claim is defensible within the context of this question, but he doesn't seem to be clear on what barbarism is, and therefore can't provide evidence to support that assertion.
Yeah,
So unfortunately, like, I think we understand where he went wrong, but that still belies weakness in his position.
I came across this too, because I'm okay with giving it a 1 if that's, I mean, even in like the last one, it says lack of government, and he just talks about politically inferior, and he talks about how like the political structure is, I guess you might say.
But, so he establishes lack of government,
Right,
and then he establishes that they have a political structure,
right, it's
which
almost
is not
contrary.
lack of government.
It's like lack of a
Backup plan.
structured sort of
I mean,
modern government.
I think, again, I'm inferring
Yeah,
what he's trying to say, and I think that it's more that the Spanish viewed them as having a lack of government because it didn't look like theirs. That's the claim that he wants to make.
yeah.
So I guess
Makes
that would
sense.
go, I think that would go more under, maybe that's a different strand, just at the interpretation.
Should we look at the standard bearers? I don't know, because on one hand, it's just that very last sentence. His other assertions do support the thesis. It doesn't say they have to comprehensively support the thesis. It doesn't say they have to be clarified in scope. It just says they have to support the thesis.
But it also says
Yeah, I think we should definitely
most.
look at the standard bearers stuff.
No, I was just looking at it too. To get a 2 from 1.
So in a 2, it says all assertions support the thesis.
I mean, they do all support the thesis, they just don't support
Just
all
not all
of the
there.
thesis.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
they do support his thesis.
The thesis has more. It's,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, but the one before it is most assertions present. So if most assertions are present in a 1, you would assume in a 2 that they are all present and that they all support.
But they do all support the thesis, they just don't support the whole thesis, they support part of the thesis.
So I'm assuming that these are not present
But they are. They're present.
in the text, in like the body of the, so they're present in the thesis, but not in,
Oh, you're saying he's missing one assertion.
yeah, in his argument.
Yeah. Alright, so what do we do for standard bearers? I just have to flip in between documents. I looked at, I think it was a 3, because that's what I chose. Uganda, and in particular, I don't know, I looked at the third assertion. Again, mine is assuming that like all of the assertions support the thesis. We really should talk about that. Like, we should come to agreement on that first.
That's tricky.
I don't think like any of the standard bearers make a call on this.
Yeah.
Or at least, did you look at a 1?
So Oscar Wilde is
Yeah.
the one, and it says this paper scored a low 1 because each paragraph is a general controlling idea. However, they do not pose an argument and they do not answer the prompt. Moreover, the thesis statement does not pose an argument. So the problem with Wilde was the argument wasn't there, rather than that the assertions weren't supporting it. So it was a different problem.
I don't know, I mean, I almost think he does make an argument. Most of his ideas are understandable, not all of them. We don't know what he means by barbarism. I'm just afraid we're gonna score this really low when he actually does have
Yeah.
a thesis.
I mean,
Because aren't we supposed to be like the same as the network support people? I don't know.
So he does have a thesis. If we just looked at the thesis by itself, what would you score it?
I did that.
Yeah, I think I scored it a 4.
I did too.
Okay. It's definitely not a 5. It's not clear.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that it encompasses, it's not nuanced.
Mm-hmm.
Or it could be nuanced, but he sort of vaguely tries to nuance it.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have agreement there that the thesis is
Well,
scored
although
a
it
4?
might not be, it might not be defensible because he doesn't define like what barbaric is.
I thought that's clarified scope.
But doesn't something have to be clarified scope to be defensible?
Mhm.
Defensible is just a truth.
Okay,
Yeah,
Like
alright.
Antigone's a hero.
right.
It's definitely not a 4 because it's not clarified scope.
See, I thought it was to
The
some extent.
thesis isn't clarified?
Well, I thought he didn't say what barbaric was. Like, what does he mean by that? Like, in what circumstances are they barbaric? Like, what is,
Yeah, I guess like what I took that as is the ideas are understandable, but the writing idea isn't necessarily clear in a 5. I don't know, I wonder if the clarified in scope is that they viewed him as inferior, and like how or
Due
why.
to.
And
Yeah.
so
Oh,
the
okay.
due to is the clarified.
alright,
Yeah.
fair enough.
But it's definitely not clear, like we pointed out.
Yeah.
And I would say like they thought they were superior. How or why?
Yeah.
More intelligent,
Mhm.
militarily and politically.
Mhm.
So
Right.
like I thought it was clarified scope.
Alright, so we agree 4 perhaps for thesis.
Mm-hmm.
Assertions is not so nice.
So can we get some clarity around, okay, assertions meaning, assertions throughout, like, assertions here or assertions inside thesis?
I took it as assertions in the body,
That's what I took it as too.
Yeah.
but you said that
Because
all these assertions do support the thesis, they just don't support the whole thesis. You were saying he has an extra assertion in his thesis that isn't present, but all his assertions do actually support the thesis.
So then what does most assertions present mean? Does it mean that everything he introduces in his thesis is present in the body?
It would say to me that like he might not, like the Oscar Wilde, there weren't even arguments. Like some of there's no assertion if a body if a paragraph is just a summary.
Yeah, and it could be
Okay.
under 5 for thesis. It says encompasses full breadth of assertions. It clearly doesn't do that. 'Cause
That's-
that, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but it's the opposite. The assertions don't cover the full breadth of the thesis.
Yeah, I think it's a 2. I think they support the thesis, but it's not the assertions like I don't know. It's not all clarified in scope. I
Are
don't
some
know.
of them clarified?
Because the natives were illiterate.
Yeah, like that's, the one that I didn't think was necessarily clarified in scope was the last one.
Yeah.
Because he says they view themselves as politically inferior.
Yeah.
And then this
Mhm.
next sentence is like just a thing. It's not related to that idea. It just says the Incas mainly
Yeah.
depended on one person. So I wanted him to say like they view themselves as inferior, and like I think someone said it's like because that lack of government doesn't look like theirs, and that's why that's like the clarified and scope
Yep.
piece that
Mhm.
isn't there.
And he does it in the second one too. They view themselves as militarily inferior due to the fact that there was 8,000 English soldiers and about 200 Spanish soldiers, and Spanish were able to conquer them.
Do you think that is clarified in scope?
Well, that's why they see them as militarily inferior.
Right. It's weird, it's just like the fact that he made them two separate sentences and didn't like link them
Mhm.
together erodes any sort of
Mhm.
clarified
Connectivity.
scope.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So given that, Michelle, do you think the second and even the first are clarified in scope?
I think the first and the second are like roughly clarified in scope.
Yeah.
I don't think the third
Yeah.
one is.
So
So
under
I-
that,
So I
under
think
that,
that's a 2.
That would make some assertions clarified in scope, right?
yeah, for
Yeah,
three.
That would be 3.
For a 4, they all need to be clarified.
I don't know about ideas in writing equals understandable is a 3 for a thesis versus most ideas equals
Mhm.
understandable. I think the fact that he doesn't address what barbarism is means most ideas are understandable, but it's not an ideas in writing are understandable, because I don't know what he means by that. So 2 would be most ideas are understandable, 3 would be,
Oh, because of the thesis?
yeah.
Can I pitch a 1 more time? And then I'll stop.
Absolutely.
I think that, like, I do know what he means by barbaric. He doesn't know what he means by barbaric. And I think that putting a word that you don't mean into your, that you don't understand into your thesis completely undermines your whole argument.
Yeah.
Like, I really think that, like,
I mean, I can get down with that, and I think it's good feedback for him. Don't put in something random you don't know.
So it's like, if I'm thinking about how to like frame the reasoning, yes, while the present assertions do address technically all parts of the prompt, it's the fact that they don't address all of the prompt.
Or all of the
it's
thesis
the
that he wrote.
thesis.
All of the
He
thesis,
didn't-
sorry, not the prompt,
yeah.
yeah, sorry,
So-
all of the thesis.
So then my last question is that in the word language of the rubric? Does that matter? Like, because that's what I thought was true,
Yeah,
but I can sort of see how you guys are saying,
because they're all relevant and they all support the thesis.
I don't think this is captured in that rubric, to be quite honest.
to
Yeah.
have information in a thesis that is not covered. It's like saying that,
Or maybe it is like higher defensible assertions provide distinct support, you know, like I don't.
see, I don't see that as distinct support. I see that as making a claim and then making a claim about 3 things
And then not.
and then only proving 2 of them.
Yeah, but he makes a claim about 4 things, proves 3 of them in each of his body paragraph, you know what I mean? It's like none of these paragraphs that none of these assertions are not related,
Yes.
and I think that's it.
Yes.
And I think if you look in the standard errors, one of them does that, it's not related
One of the body paragraphs isn't related, or one of the,
assertions, I'm trying to remember.
What?
I don't think this is captured in this rubric. I think we found a hole.
So I guess we ultimately have to make a decision.
Yeah.
So for the standard bearers, which one did you, yours didn't necessarily work out?
I looked at 3 and 1. The WOW paper that was a 1 was because it was more summary than argument.
Mhm.
So I can understand how this is making an argument, like I get that, and I can, I'm okay with bumping it up a little bit. I just think like, based on what I have, like I really think it's a 1. Like, based on what the rubric says, I can understand like spirit of the rubric versus letter of the
Yeah.
rubric. I can get behind that.
And FYI, a 2 is ingredients of a revolution. The thesis is a 1, but it's because it doesn't make an argument, just states facts. But I
Yeah,
guess what I'm thinking is, what's the most useful feedback for Eric? I mean, he did,
it's definitely a 1, I think if. I'm nervous though because all of his assertions are directly related to the prompt. It might be, is it a problem with the assertions or is it a problem with the
it's
thesis?
a thesis.
It's a
It's
thesis,
yes.
So I don't think we can give it a 1 then.
I think it's a 2, and I think it might be, I honestly think it might be the defensible thing. Like, if you wanna look at, like, how can you tell him? It's not defensible because you just made some random thing you never talked about again, it didn't tell us what it was.
So like what would make it if we had to rewrite it?
So, he could say barbaric means people are illiterate. He could say,
Shouldn't say it, just leave it out. Actually, it was very July.
What does that mean?
I think that it would make it a stronger argument though.
So then, is it a problem with the thesis, or is it a problem with the assertions? Because if barbaric is in there and makes it a stronger argument, then there's not a problem with the thesis, there's a problem with the assertions.
I think he just needs to get rid of that second sentence and say they felt they were more intelligent, politically, military and politically superior because, and then tell me under what circumstances, why do they think they're more intelligent or militarily and politically superior?
because the sub-arguments there show up in the assertion as
Exactly,
well.
so they're more intelligent because they're literate, they're more
Yeah.
military superior because they just,
Yeah.
overpowered them, and they're politically superior because they don't depend on a
Right,
person or something.
But see, what Amina was saying was that barbaric being in there
I think it,
makes it more nuanced.
yeah, exactly.
Well, true, but like, we're talking like nuances like up here, like we want nuances at like 5. Like, I'm just
Okay.
trying to get him
Okay.
to defensible before we get into, it'd be lovely if he did.
So we're saying the thesis is not defensible.
I think he defends his thesis.
He just has an extra sentence in the thesis
Yeah.
that he doesn't address anywhere else.
Yeah, so that's it, that's the problem.
Yeah.
Now how do we pin that on the rubric?
I think you could argue that it's not defensible, because he never addresses what barbarism is, or like lack of government is.
But does just
Yeah.
because he
What does
doesn't
it
do
say?
it, make it not defensible?
What does defensible mean?
You know what I mean?
Hold on. Defensible means, a thesis statement is defensible if an opposing argument and alternate view can reasonably be argued.
So they were barbaric. No, they weren't barbaric because they were
Yeah, they
a
had
civilized
culture,
people
yeah.
that had a culture.
But
Like, we're talking about the Spanish view of them.
well, but like, he doesn't say what barbaric means, so how, I don't know what to argue against him. Because I think that like, the only thing he addresses as barbaric is that they can't read. So.
Which isn't barbaric.
I know.
It's just
So like,
illiterate.
I don't think it's defensible because it's not clarified scope. I guess I'm conflating clarified scope and defensible.
So I think that just because he doesn't defend it does not make it not defensible. And I
Yeah.
think that's
Okay.
All right, then let's say that his ideas in writing are not understandable.
no, because we understand.
I don't understand what he means by barbaric.
You don't? Or is it not clear?
I don't know what he means by barbaric. I know what I mean by barbaric. I mean, what I really want is that there to be a line on the rubric that says, as a 2,
In assertions, does not fully capture.
yeah, but there
The
isn't,
breadth of
so.
the thesis.
Yeah.
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 I mean, where can we fit that in?
For assertions, for 2, all assertions support thesis may not fully capture breadth of thesis or something like that.
Yeah.
Maybe it's maybe his assertions aren't clarified in scope enough to support what he's claiming in the thesis.
Ooh.
So like, it might still hit at a 3. Some assertions are clarified because he talks about the illiterate.
Assertions clarified in scope when necessary for a 4.
Doesn't.
He's not necessarily clarifying when he needs to. Like, he's not giving us enough clarified in scope.
I can get on board with that.
I can get on board with that too.
And I mean, the 3 is Uganda, and that had a third assertion that wasn't clarified in scope, which held it back from a 4.
So we're now saying he's actually a 3?
Mark found a loophole.
Because
Let's say
his
like
thesis is definitely not a 4, because it's not clarified in scope.
that. I thought it was 4. Yeah, we thought it was 4.
Oh, but it's not clarified in scope.
Well, I think that what
Oh,
we
you
had
said it
defined
was,
it
you
as
said it was.
Yeah.
only like in the sense that a non-clarified in scope might be they viewed the natives as inferior,
Okay.
or like yeah,
Okay, so it says assertions are clarified in scope when necessary at a 4,
yeah, no,
but they're not, so it's
Yeah.
a 3.
Yeah.
for that reason. If you can get on board with the 4 for the thesis, and this one sentence captures the problem. He has an extra sentence in the thesis that does not show up in his arguments,
Yeah.
in his
We
assertions.
should probably move
Or it
forward,
doesn't show up
given the
clearly.
time.
Yeah. All right, so we can get on board with the 3 then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not pretty, good feedback for the rubric, and a very unique problem to have.
Good job, Eric.
So the thesis is a 4, assertions 3. I got it from here.
Okay.
All right, hopefully next one will be a little bit easier. Interpretation, not so great. Yes. I'll go first. We'll try and keep this to a time limit here. Interpretation, I give 1. I think there's an argument to be made for scoring at a 2. My thing was I got stuck between explanation was related to the assertion versus connected versus linked. Because if you only have to look at that justification strand of the rubric. So I made a few arguments here to prove that it wasn't connected, and it just sort of it analyzed and never made the connection back to the assertion. So I'm done.
Okay. I also gave it a 1. I pretty much agree with what you said about just making those extra connections and relating them back to the assertion. So I pretty much agree with what you said.
I also gave it a 1, and here's why. The criterion for 1 and justification for the Antigone note for the ingredients of the revolution paper, there was a note that was like spot on. It said, a good litmus test is general confusion. As a reader, do you finish the paragraph and think, wait, what did I just read? What does that have to do with anything? If the answer is yes, then the interpretations are not generally understandable. This type of confusion does not happen in this paper, which makes it a 1. Which I would agree is spot on for this. Like, I'm not totally confused.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
He just doesn't get me to where he's going.
Mm-hmm.
Which makes ingredients of a revolution 1, which makes his paper 1.
Okay, so let's talk about it. So my thing was like the idea of, I thought it was understandable. I thought it was fairly understandable. I even thought he had some like strong, like interesting logic loop, like the fact that Atalupa did not even know how to open a book illustrates that he's illiterate, and then like that, it's not great, but like interesting logic there where also since he was the emperor during his time, shows that if the ruler of nearly 1 million people doesn't know how to read, then it wouldn't be very likely. Like that's an interesting logic.
Mhm.
That makes sense. So I want to give him a 2 for some of that. But then there's this other stuff where he just ends his like interpretation by saying like the Spanish are able to communicate with each other as well as learn from writing. The Bible is used to teach people the teachings of God, heaven, hell, etc. The priest felt that he should teach the natives about Christianity because he didn't think the natives had a religion of their own. That's all he says. It's like, where's the part, like, this is illustrative of the natives.
Intelligence.
Yeah, like,
That
of the
goes back to
Spanish.
Intelligence.
So is that a link or is that a connection?
It's not linked.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure, right?
Well, I also think that his interpretation is lacking because his evidence is so simple.
Oh, yeah.
So his evidence shows illiteracy, but not the judgment of their illiteracy, and so
Right.
he's unable to link it back
Right.
because he doesn't have anything to
Yeah.
go off of
Well,
showing.
yeah.
Well, link is a 3, though, that's my concern. Link is a 3, connection is a 2.
I don't think he connects either.
Because it just sort of ends interpretations. There's no, like, connection back.
Yeah.
And it says explanations related to the assertion, like, heck yeah, it's related, like, I know what you're trying to say.
But it's not connected.
Yeah, it's definitely, I don't think it's connected, because he never goes back to intelligence again.
Again, it's a fairly simple fix, I think. It's just
Yeah.
like 1 or 2 more sentences that just, like, attacks the assertion head on with the evidence in mind.
Mhm. And relating that, so to go back to our earlier conversation, like he could there relate it to barbarism,
Yeah.
explaining how they're uncivilized because they can't read. That's the judgy part. That's
Mhm.
what he needs.
Okay. Are we okay with the 1?
Yeah.
Standard bearers, we both use ingredients. Or did
I
you use
used
any?
ingredients and Antigone.
What did you see from Antigone?
It talked about how the analysis wasn't focused, and the lack of incorporation of keywords and interpretation, which
Yeah.
he doesn't do at all.
We
Well, you
don't
can't
need
do that,
keywords,
yeah.
do you?
He doesn't have keywords.
Yeah.
Just.
Is that a 2, Antigone?
Yes.
The analysis is not focused. Interesting. Okay, so have your keywords, that's obviously the paper. And for standard bearers, so the first one started to jump back. You
Yeah.
used Oscar Wilde and Uganda.
Yeah.
Okay. That's in you have stuff for Oscar Wilde. Wow, it was a little bit easier. We're in agreement with the 1.
Mhm.
All right, last one. Sentence fluency. Whip around again. I gave this a 3. There's evidence of compound complex sentences. I've got some if you want to look. I think the sentences were fairly fluent. Very few run-ons. They're mostly complete. I wrote that there were some repetition of ideas, but I think that they're not as repetitive as some of like the standard bearer that I saw. My ingredients of revolution was a 2. Next.
I gave it a 2. I thought it was not a 3 because it was not primarily free of extraneous expressions and generally free of unnecessary repetition of ideas. So I guess we need to zoom in on the definitions of those. And I thought it matched ingredients of Revolution.
I also gave it a 2. It does use some active verbs and appropriate language, but I did see that he makes, one thing that really stuck out to me was that the Spanish viewed themselves as politically inferior, which completely undermines his entire argument. I don't know if that fits under fluency, but
So you gave it 2 as well.
I gave it a 2.
All right.
I guess it could be most sentences develop ideas and is a, oh, so that's a 4 though. Because he does, yeah, you're looking at the third
Actually,
assertion.
I said that it didn't do that at 4. I thought that.
Right,
that was-
right, that's what I
yeah.
meant. She said I didn't know where it was in the
Yeah.
rubric. I think that it could be, it doesn't develop ideas because it's wrong word choice
Mhm.
actually gets rid of his ideas. But that's a 4, so I wonder why
Okay.
Yeah, I got it. I mean, I scored it at a 3. Can you show me where you thought the extraneous expressions were?
No, I think it was repetition of ideas that I noted. Yeah.
Okay.
So the Spanish were able to kill an army of natives with a small group of men. Though the natives had a land-based, thinking land bias, a number advantage over the Spanish, the natives having about 8,000 men were defeated by a group of Spanish numbering around 168. I just thought like they spent too long telling me too many, like they kept talking about it, or he kept talking about it when he needed to say it once. And then like, according to the text, the Spanish always had a second in command that would take lead if anything happens to the one in charge. The Spanish felt that having just one person in charge would not be the smartest thing, especially if the person becomes corrupt. So like that idea, I just felt like he's separating things into 2 sentences that he could say in one much more concisely.
Although I might argue that those sentences actually do bring the ideas forward because it's like, the first one was the Spanish were able to kill an army of natives with a small group of men. And in the next piece, he does repeat a little bit, but he gives me more specifics. He's like, whoa, here are these numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I might have like not, if he said it all in the first sentence, I'd be like, stop throwing numbers at me, I don't know what you're saying. Like he's got like an assertion and then he gives like a little bit more detail. And the second one you said, I can't remember what it was, but
It was the phrasing
it
for me.
developed another idea.
It's like the
I
one in
agree with
charge, the person in charge. Like I just felt like maybe it's word choice that I'm
Mhm.
noticing more than sentence fluency.
I think I was really focused on word choice.
Yeah, I still don't think, I agree with Michelle, that the sentences are maybe a little bit repetitive, but they're like providing examples. And I think the one example you brought up was definitely moving the argument forward. I don't think that he generally does that in his
Yeah.
sentences though. Like, I don't think,
And it just says generally free of unnecessary repetition. Is generally, isn't it half?
yeah. I agree though, I do agree that it's generally free of repetition. That's why I gave it a 3. I think the rest is, I have several examples of complex compound.
Yeah, that was my only holdback from the 3. So
Well, actually, we've had this problem before. You can't find generally on this thing.
It's on the
It's
top.
only on the
Scroll.
page.
Oh, yeah,
it's
you're right.
not on the new one.
So looking at standard bearers, I looked at ingredients of a revolution. That one actually also had a similar issue to the looking at Seymour paper. It says in this paper, the lack of clear ideas leads to poor sentence fluency, as opposed to the writer's natural skills or vocab. And like that was holding it back because it was like very repetitious, repetitive. Sorry. So